Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. Thanks for coming. As mentioned, Megan Alexander. I work for Inside Edition. I've been with the show for 8 years, have been in television, radio, film for over a decade now, about 14 years in the business total, and also for the past 2 years covered Thursday Night Football on CBS for all the local stations across the country, and also an actress and a producer of some projects. A little bit about me. So born and raised in Seattle, Washington, and raised in a Christian home, went to one of just a few Christian schools in Seattle, and had a moment in high school. You know, I was one of those kids that liked to try a little bit of everything, loved to perform. I'm one of 2 girls in my family. I'm the second, so benefited from watching my older sister do a lot of things and admiring her. And then in high school, I remember getting ready for prom with a group of friends. And one of the guys in our group, his dad was there, the Reverend Shields. He was a pastor. And I remember him asking all the kids, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? What are you excited about? What are you going to study in college? And I remember sort of apologizing and saying to him, the pastor, well, I think I want to be a news anchor. I know it's media and entertainment, but I think that's what God's called me to do. I think I have those skills and talents. And he said to me something that was a defining moment for me. He said, Megan, every job is a ministry. Every job is a mission field. That was an empowering moment for me to hear that from him and to know that my world had just opened up and that God could use me in whatever way I felt he was calling me. It was a big moment. From high school, I headed to Westmont College. Jeff and I met there. Wonderful school, had that great liberal arts education. You guys are getting that here. There was no broadcast journalism department. I majored in political science and just got on-the-job training. I think I did about 7 different internships before I got my first paid job and just got involved and started, you know, finding out what it was like to be on set when breaking news happened and started getting bit parts acting and writing and producing. And it was one of those things where, you know, my father worked in finance, is getting ready to retire from Merrill Lynch and Bank of America in Seattle, has had a great career. My mom was a stay-at-home mom some of the time with my sister and I, also an educator and worked in the art history world. They knew no one in the business. They said, honey, good luck. We don't have a friend in media or entertainment. You're on your own. So I had 0 friends and went after it myself. And I remember cold calling radio stations my senior year at Westmont and emailing radio stations and television stations. And one station got back to me. Not country music, not pop music, not hip hop, not anything sexy. Classical music. My first job was the midnight to 6 a.m. shift, classics till sunrise. But I got my foot in the door. And learned so much and was thrilled to even be making $9 an hour at that station. And it began there. And I started planting seeds. And God kept opening doors. And I kept feeling like this was where I was supposed to be. And one thing led to the next. I went to Nashville, Tennessee, worked in radio there, tons of different part-time jobs. You know, again, you're just trying to figure out your way. And then I got a chance to fill in for a week at a television station in Nashville, got my tape made, which now is a DVD or whatever it is that they still email, and heard that San Antonio, Texas was looking for a morning traffic reporter and a co-host for an entertainment show that they had. Got the first job down there and sort of just kept doing my thing. I didn't have this big master plan, but I was confident that God wanted me to work in this industry. And I shared this morning with the Robertsons at these different events that we've done, I didn't start out wearing my WWJD bracelet in this industry. I didn't wear the cross necklace. I didn't wear my faith on my sleeve. I wanted to be known for good work. I wanted to be known for being an excellent reporter, a good host, a good producer, a good writer. And that really has become the theme of my book, which is a seat at the table. I believe that we need to take a seat at the table as believers in society, especially in careers of influence. I realize sitting up here before you, I'm not a doctor saving lives. I'm not a teacher influencing the next generation. I'm not a foster parent But whether we like it or not, I am in an industry that is incredibly influential in shaping culture. And I'll just read you something that Tim Keller, a pastor of Redeemer Presbyterian Church in New York, a wonderful author, that he wrote that just really nailed it for me in terms of what this is all about. He says, "Why, as the city goes, so goes the culture. Cultural trends tend to be generated in the city and flow outward toward the rest of society. People who live in large urban cultural centers, occupying jobs in the arts, business, academics, publishing, helping professions, and yes, media, tend to have a disproportionate impact on how things are done in culture. Having lived and ministered in New York City for 17 years, I am continually astonished at how the people living here affect what everyone else in the United States sees on screen, in print, in art, and in business." In other words, I'm in such an incredibly influential industry. That's where I need to be. And when I got into this industry, I had people say to me, "That's Satan's playground. Why do you want to work in media and entertainment?" Isn't that exactly where we should go? Isn't that exactly where we should be? So it's San Antonio for a couple years. Live television. I co-hosted this morning show called Great Day SA, which is a lot like a Good Morning America for Texas. And again, here I am, this young 20-something on live television, needing to suddenly decide, who was I going to be on air versus off air? Is that going to be the same person? These real life scenarios and these real life questions. And I'll just share a couple stories before I pass it on to the Robertsons here. But a big one for me was, as I began co-hosting this show, my co-host, who's a dear friend, not a believer, but a wonderful person and a great co-host, she had a serious boyfriend. I knew about it. I met him. He's a great guy. And I remember on air once on our television show, she said she was single. And, you know, just kind of rolled with the conversation. And then when the show was over that day, I said, "Hey, are you still with Jeff?" And she's like, "Oh, yeah, I'm very much taken and with Jeff, but on camera, I'm single. I'm available." And I just thought, wow. Okay, and think about that one for a second, guys. The next time you hear a TV host tell you they're single on air, what's really going on behind the scenes? But that just kind of opened up my world of, wait a second, people aren't the same on and off camera? What does a believer do? What do we do with that when the Bible tells us that the Lord detests lying lips and, you know, the truth will set you free? What do we do with that? And my producer on the show went and chatted with him, and he said, "Megan, I'd prefer you appear single." Now, I was dating my now husband. He was my boyfriend at the time. And I had to make a decision. Who was I going to be? Studied, you know, what the Bible says, how I was raised. And I just said, hey, I got to be me. And my faith says I'm supposed to be truthful on and off camera. Went on the next show and started talking about my boyfriend. And I didn't look back. And that was a real life moment that's just important to share, because I had no idea being on that television show that was going to be a part of what I would need to decide as a believer. And from then on, it was little situations and little moments and different stories and how I was going to react. Got to Inside Edition. I've been with the show now for 8 years, and I can share similar stories with you. I really believe that, you know, we need to have people in the room when stories are going down and decisions are being made. I don't believe personally, my personal take, I don't believe there is a big conspiracy or a big effort to keep believers out of media or entertainment. I just don't think there's a lot of us there. I just don't think there's a lot of us in the room. I've seen that in my career, that the different people that I've worked with, church just isn't a big part of their life. It's just not. And so when I talk about what I did on the weekend and I say I've gone to church, they're like, that's what my grandparents do. You still go to church? It's just not a part of who they are. I don't see it as much in New York City, which is why we need believers there to be in the mix and taking a seat at the table. The book tackles that from a variety of angles. I don't think that there's a book out there right now for the young millennial that's needing to tackle this conversation, especially for women of faith. It kind of crystallized for me the need to write this book when I got an email from a pastor in Seattle a couple years ago. And he said to me, Megan, I have a church full of young, ambitious women with big career goals and dreams in secular society. They are worried to get that corner office, to climb the ladder, to host that show or get that part. They're going to need to compromise their faith to get ahead. I have few role models, especially in entertainment, but I know of you. Would you come speak to my church? And I said, I'd love to come speak to your church. I'll take it one step further. I'm going to write this book. Again, didn't ever think that this would sort of be me in my life and what I'd be doing now, but I think there comes a moment when you look around and you go, well, nobody else is doing it. Lord, am I supposed to do this? Okay, here we go. So I wrote the book, and it tackles mentors, body image, being a female in this image-obsessed industry. What do we do with that? Remembering who you are in the moment, covering the NFL as a female, and my different experiences there. Negotiating a contract. How do we do that as believers and as strong women? What's it like? I had 2 years, specifically with my NFL gig, where I negotiated my own contracts. Fabulous experience. And I want to encourage and especially empower women that it is possible. And so I share my stories with that. And, I really believe that there's some fear out there about being in mainstream media, if you will. And I want to just encourage, and I don't want people to be fearful, because it is indeed possible. At the end of the day, people have asked me, since you wrote this book, what's the atmosphere been like, at Inside Edition? And I tell them, I went into it wanting to do good work. And again, I didn't really talk about my faith that much in the beginning. And I'm hopeful that I established myself as Megan Alexander, the reporter. She'll meet deadlines. We can count on her. My photographer knows we're in this together. We're a team. My boss knows I can deliver for him. They knew that girl first. So now when I'm talking about my faith, it's just, okay, that's just Megan. That's just another part of her life that she's talking about. My boss has been incredibly supportive of this because he's a father, and he loves the idea of anyone encouraging women to value themselves, to set goals, to think highly of their dreams and their life. So that has been my approach. I realize this is not one size fits all. Every day is different. Every situation is different. But I'm excited to just share with you a bit about my experience. So excited and proud for you to hear from the Robertsons now, who have had a blast spending this whole day with. And it's them doing projects and shows like they're doing that I'm allowed to then be the messenger and report on Duck Dynasty on Inside Edition. And how cool is that? Because they're doing what they're doing. So I'm going to pass it off to them now, and we'll take questions in a bit. Thank you, everybody.